Hello, my name is Lo G, and welcome to my first gear overview. Throughout the past weeks or months, I've had a few people ask me about what I'm using when I'm recording or when I'm just playing in general, so I figured I would try to put something together to show you what I'm doing. What you'll see a pedal board, and this is the exact same pedal board that I would use for recording as well as live. I set it up pretty much exactly the same way. A couple little settings are slightly different on one of the pedals, but it's mostly exactly the same. Full disclosure, I'm not a huge gear person. What you're seeing on this pedal board, maybe minus 3 other pedals, is the extent of all the pedals I've ever owned in my life. I'm not like a huge, buy, sell kind of person. I just kind of find something that works and I stick with it until I find something better. But I'm not constantly searching. I'm just kind of settling on certain things, and then I'll evolve down the road if I find something different. So that's kind of my method. So let's talk about the Xotic first, because that is what I'm using for when I'm recording, when I'm in the studio, aka this room. I approach the Xotic exactly how I approach a clean amp. Back in the day when I first had the Xotic, I tried to get the majority of my tone from it, meaning I tried to get like compression and drive and amp and etc. from the Xotic, and I always had problems getting what I wanted, so I just decided to approach it exactly like how I would with a tube amp, like how I would play live. So what you'll see in the Xotic, and I'll put up on the screen like my exact signal path or my chain through the Xotic, is just an amp, a clean amp, no drive, just a clean amp, into an EQ, into the cabinet, and then at the end is just a volume control to make sure things don't peak, as they sometimes can in the Xotic. So I like just a plain, clean template for pretty much everything I do. If I'm playing live, I will do the same thing. I usually play with the Fender Deville, just the plain, clean setting. The drive channel on that sounds like absolute garbage, so I don't use it, but the clean sounds fine. I've played through Rivera Sedan Lite, which sounded killer. I've played a Mesa Lone Star, sounded amazing. I've played an AC30, sounded good. Every time I'm only using the clean channels. I'm not getting drive from the amp. I'm not really a huge fan of amp drive. I'm a much bigger fan of pedal drive, but maybe I just haven't found the right amp yet. Maybe that will change down the road. But that's how I'm using the Xotic in the same way. Just a clean amp, a little bit of EQ, cabinet, and that's it. So the exact settings that I have, I'll put it up on the screen. I mean, I've messed around a lot with this. I'm not an Xotic master by any means. I'm just like pushing buttons, turning knobs until it sounds right, and then moving on to the next thing, pushing buttons, turning knobs until it sounds right, etc. Yeah, so if some of you are Xotic masters out there, you might see my settings and vomit, and I understand if that's what you do. I apologize in advance. So what I'm using here is, for my clean sound, is the amp is a Euro Blue. That's the Bogner Ecstasy, and again, I'm just like pushing buttons and stuff until it sounds right, until it sounds good. The EQ that I have, let's take a look at it, is the low end is dropped, a little bit of frequencies, and the higher end are boosted slightly. I find that sometimes the low end can be a little woofy or a little bassy with the clean sounds on an Xotic, so I have it dropped a little bit. And then the cabinet, again, it's a 412 V30 cabinet. I'm pushing buttons, turning knobs, playing random putting on random mics, etc. until it sounds good. I have 2 mics on it. I have a U87 condenser and then a ribbon mic on the right. Again, pushing knobs, pushing buttons, turning knobs, etc. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. I'm just messing around. So that's the bass tone. Let's listen to what that sounds like. So this is just Xotic, nothing else. Let's play some chords. Sounds fine, and then if I play just like a little lead, right, it's okay. I am not a fan of that tone. It works, it can definitely work for certain things. If you're going for that kind of like super ultra clean sounding guitar, almost like DI guitar, like a lot of old school funk players would do, it's fine. This is not my clean tone though. I do other things before I officially say this is my clean tone. And the first thing is compression. Well, first, before I get into the exact pedals, let me go over my signal path. So my signal path is tuner, compression, Nano Attack, Tumnus, BB, and then the dude at the end. And then the Strymon and the delay are both in an effects loop. I'm not using an effects loop right now, so we don't have to worry about those. But that is the signal path. It goes like this, and then down, and then like that. and then into the amp. So the first thing I use is this Wampler compression pedal. This one's a pretty old version, so if you were to buy this today, it will not look like this. But hopefully mine continues to work because I like it quite a bit. The settings are pretty much exactly how I would have it if I was playing live with a tube amp. The only difference is I have a lot more of the blend. So if I'm using a tube amp, the blend would be like here, probably more towards like 10 o'clock or so, but through the Axe effects, I find I need more of it. I'm just going for punch, right? The tone is not wildly different. Here's just the Axe effects. Here's the Axe effects with the compression. Right, the tone is slightly darker, yes, but it's more for a feel thing. Like I want the notes to feel fuller, and I find that the Axe effects, maybe it's because my setup, I'm only using 5-inch PA speakers, maybe if I had a sub it would be different, but I find the Axe effects to be a little bit thin feeling, so the compression just helps with that, and that's why I have it up a little bit. If I'm going through a tube amps have natural punch in them, so I will use less of it, but that's pretty much what I'm doing here. All the other knobs are roughly the same. It changes depending on, you know, how I feel that day, but that's pretty much how I have it right now. And then the next thing that I will do, kind of my base level clean tone, is the BB Preamp. So this right now is pretty much my baseline for clean. So let me turn off, and you can hear again just the amp. Here it is clean. Or lead, I should say. And then this is with the BB. You can see it's still clean. It's like just on the verge of being driven. And of course, if I play hard, like it'll sound slightly driven. But to me, it sounds like a full, punchy, rich, clean tone. Whereas this sounds kind of weak. It's okay. It's like too clean. It's too soft. This has just a little bit of aggression. Makes everything pop out a little bit better. It makes everything just have a little bit more energy. So that's my baseline clean tone, and this again is exactly the same if I'm playing through an amp. And the reason the way I'm getting this tone is this BB, the gain is really low. It's under 9 o'clock, so it's probably like, I don't know, 8 o'clock or somewhere in there. So because of that, gain is low, volume's up slightly, treble's up, bass is up. So it's barely doing anything to the tone in regards to drive. It's just adding a tiny little bit of fullness to the tone, which I think feels and sounds way better. Right, I like energy and fullness to be in my clean tone. I don't really like straight clean, like dry, dead clean. I'm not a huge fan of that, and I think this pretty much solves the problem. So that's my bass clean tone. Now, the Tumnus and the Nano Attack I will use in similar ways, but they'll just achieve slightly different things. So if the BB, if I kind of say that's like my neutral tone, the Tumnus will be a slightly more focused, mid-rangey, maybe darker tone, but it's still a similar thing. The gain is really low, under 9 o'clock, the volume is up slightly, the EQ is pretty much flat. So let me again do this without the Tumnus. This is just Axe effects. Right, this is with Tumnus. Right, a little bit less brightness than the BB, but if I want more of like a focus, almost like if I'm playing like a jazz, like I'm doing something like that, I will probably turn that on if I'm doing a jazz gig. A couple years ago I did a string of jazz gigs, and that was pretty much my tone. It was Fender Deville, Ego Compression, and then the Tumnus, pretty much exactly how it is, and it worked really well for that. It sounded really good. And that's, by the way, with neck. Right, this is with these two, which is pretty much what I usually do. All the settings sound pretty good. And that's the Tumnus. And then the Nano Attack is kind of, I consider it my secret weapon. I mean, it's not a secret weapon because most people know what this pedal is, but most people will use this pedal as an enhancement for their driven tone, especially when it comes to palm muting. Like, it enhances the attack of a palm muted, power chord or a low hit. and it sounds really great for that. But another use for it that I think sounds just as good is beefing up your clean tone, because it actually beefs up your clean strumming and leads in the same way as it would for your driven tone. So if I'm playing this is just amp, just with a little compression, right? This is Nano Attack. Just gives it extra aggression. Right, it's making all those like little hits, the dead notes, really loud, and that's again because it's like beefing up the attack. If you do want to dig in, it works really well for that. Right, it's really, really cool tone for leads as well. That gives it more of like that jangly strat tone that most people know, but it's just like an enhanced version of that. So that's the Nano Attack, that's how I use it. And again, that's just clean tone, compression, Nano Attack. And the Nano Attack might be hard to see. If you're not familiar with the Nano Attack, how it works, it's like a locked positioning. It's not like a smooth position like a normal pedal. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 settings. And I'm on, if furthest to the left is the first setting, second, third. I'm on the third setting for that, so it's like a slightly brighter, not super bright, but one of the brighter settings. So if I am playing live, if I want like a real snappy, if I'm playing like a hard funk tune, that's the pedal I'm going to turn on. And it's like, again, a fuller, punchier, clean tone, but extra bright and extra, you know, snappy on the strums in particular. And again, I'm like picking super hard, and I use pretty thick picks, so that's kind of helping with that. But yeah, that is how I will generally go about my clean tone, right? I consider all of this clean tone, right? It's just different kind of EQ spikes depending on what I want. And the cool thing is I can easily switch it on the fly. Like if this is my bass tone right here, and I'm playing in a situation where I just need a little bit more brightness, I'll just switch to the Nano Attack, and then it'll solve my problem. And if I'm playing in a situation where for some reason the room is like really bright or something like that, then my bass tone will become the Tumnus, because it kind of cuts away a little bit of the high end and adds a little bit more mid-range. Right, that's the Tumnus, and then this is the Nano Attack, so that's kind of the opposite. Again, they all have their own uses and they're all good. And then after that, I can start mixing and matching them, right? If I want like BB and Tumnus, that's slightly driven, more warm sound. Very, very, very slight. Ever so slightly. Then if I want a little bit more drive and more brightness, more snap on the hits. Right, and that's with BB Nano Attack. So I can kind of mess around with that depending on what I want. And all of these tones are obviously really subtle. I'm not really a player that I'm going crazy with different gain stages and tones and stuff. I'm pretty much just like clean or slightly dirty, and that's my whole thing. So this works for me. I'm not gonna say it will work for you, but if you do like this sort of thing where you just want to mess around with ever so slightly different changes or adjustments to your clean, I like this kind of setting, or this setup pretty well. And then the last pedal, I don't really use it ever for recording because I'm not really doing anything that's like super high gain, is this this pedal by Rockett called the Dude. The pedal is really awesome. I just don't really use it that much because it's not really my thing, but for live, if I need like a really actually like high gain lead or something like that, that's when I'll turn it on. It actually sounds really good with the Nano Attack as well. So this is my neck pickup. It's kind of that classic like higher gain. It's kind kind of that higher gain. If you want to do like obnoxious stuff like that, that's like the perfect pedal for that, and there are some gigs where I do have to do that. But generally, yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing. Most of the time, if I'm recording, it's this setup for the Axe effects, right? It's just plain clean. Again, by itself, that just sounds like this. Fine, but added in with some of these other drive pedals, just beefs it up a little bit. Right, it's a cool sound. So sometimes with the Axe effects, I will use a slightly higher gain patch. I don't really do it too much, but I'll just do that anyway. You can see what that sounds like. It's the same amp, just slightly, you know, different settings that are slightly higher gain. So that's just the amp and nothing else. Sounds pretty good. And then maybe with like the Nano Attack. If I'm going for that kind of thing, like an actual like driven, more rock sound. Let me do it with, how about this pickup? You can do a lot of nice little variety, and that's just like an ever so slightly higher gain setting. I'll put that up on the screen as well. I have no idea what I did to get this tone, I'll be honest with you. Again, I'm just pushing buttons, turning knobs until it sounds right. You know, once I find a tone, I just like wipe the sweat from my brow and say, thank God I found it, and then I just save it, and then just use that until I start to hate it down the road, and then I'll do the whole process over and over again. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully all this stuff makes sense. Feel free to ask me any other questions in regards to gear, but I'm not the gear person, to be honest. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. I'm not really doing any crazy stuff. It's just stacking gain pedals, which I really think is the ticket, at least for me. For the longest time, I never really knew about it until I just randomly started messing around with it, and it pretty much solved all my problems so far. So hopefully all this stuff makes sense. See you in the next one.